and welcome to Jung at Harp. Today we're going to talk about hearing your own supportive voice. I'm Deborah Henson-Conant, and I'm here with Kathleen Wiley, and each week we meet to open up a conversation with each other and with you about something that we're interested in exploring. I'm a composer and a performer, and I also have an online school. And Kathleen is a Jungian Psychoanalyst, and we both play the harp, and therefore we call this Jung at Harp. And each week we explore something not from we're using our expertise, we're using our curiosity, we're using our interest in life, but we're coming from a question and not to give you the advice or give us each other the advice. We're exploring the art and the power and the beauty of conversation. And we invite you into that conversation as well. Depending on the platform you're on, you should be able to, or you may be able to, it is technology after all, you may be able to comment and we'll bring up the chats and then we bring you into the conversation as well. So today we wanted to talk about hearing your own supportive voice. And this came out of a lot of things that are happening for me. There are a lot of things that I'm juggling in my life, and I'm managing some of them and I'm not managing some of them. And a friend of mine had an issue yesterday where she was she made a mistake that she's made over and over and over again. And we were talking about it. And I was realizing that so often we are not putting into place the help that would make a difference. And I hear this from musicians all the time. They want to play in good time, but they won't use a metronome and refuse to count out loud. So that's a perfect little example. Mm-hmm. Or I want to get the garbage out quickly on Sundays, and I have a checklist, but I don't go find that checklist and use it. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to tell a little story that holds the heart of this for me. And then Kathleen really brought it into I'll tell you, Kathleen can tell you how she brought it into this, hearing our own voice. So there's a story in the Arabian Nights, and it's about this woman is abducted by, gods or fairies or something like that. And she has 3 children at home, and her children, after a while, the children are going to go try to find her. Mm-hmm. And first the eldest son rides off on his horse and he's told, you go to the bottom of that hill. Your mother's probably been abducted to the top of that hill. You talk to the hermit at the bottom. He'll tell you what to do. So the guy goes, he talks to the hermit. The hermit says, okay, here's the thing. You're going to go up to the hill. Your mother is at the top of the hill. Do not turn around. You're going to hear voices. Do not turn around. The guy's like, okay, no problem. Starts up the hill. He hears this voice, hey, Buster, what are you? And he turns around, turns to stone. So the next son, after a little while, he goes there and he, everyone tells him, go to the hermit, ask the hermit. Hermit says, okay, listen, many people have been turned to stone. Here's what's going to happen. You just start up the hill. Do not turn around. And the guy says, no problem. Going to do it. I'm strong. Starts up the hill and he hears this voice, hey, big boy. And he turns around. He turns to stone. So that just leaves the daughter. The daughter goes to the bottom of the hill. The hermit says, okay, so here's the thing. You're going to start up the hill. You're going to hear voices. Do not turn around. Everyone gets turned to stone. Your brothers have gotten turned to stone. Just don't turn around. And she says, can I use something to help me? And he says, sure, like what? And she's like, can I put cotton in my ears? And he's like, okay. And so she goes and gets the cotton from some plants. She puts them in her ears and she walks up the hill and she starts hearing all these voices that trigger her, but they're muted. She gets to the top of the hill. She liberates her mother. She gets the singing tree and the golden bird, and everybody else who's been frozen to stone is unleashed. And that story has stuck with me for years and years. Mm-hmm. And what you said when you heard that story about hearing our own, say what you said.
Yes. So, what struck what stood out for me in the story was she asked for support. She heard her own need. She felt her own vulnerability and her brother's vulnerability at being blasted with these voices, and the power that that has to activate an instinctive response to turn around and look. So she was in touch with her own vulnerability and thus the need that would support her, if that need was met, that could support her in getting where she wanted, which was to get to her mother. And, I work with people all day long in my office and year after year. And one of the biggest issues for everybody, including myself, is really getting okay with having our own needs, with needing support. But to feel our need, well, to get support, we have to feel our need. To fill a need, FEEL, mean to know a need, we have to feel, FEEL, our vulnerability. Instead of trying to fill, FILL, our vulnerability with overeating, addictive behaviors, overworking, too much alcohol, whatever, we have to be able to tolerate and bear the feeling, the felt sense, and the body. And the daughter in the fairy tale, she could feel that. When she heard what had happened, she wasn't all inflated. Oh, that won't be a problem. I can do it all. Felt she felt her own vulnerability. I mean, it's feeling that none of us are impenetrable. None of us are infallible. You know, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. We all can be pulled off track by other people's ideas. We can be pulled off track by our own negative inner voices. That's why we're calling this episode Hearing Your Own Supportive Voice, because most people they know the negative voices.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So there's so much I want to say. I'm as you're talking about the fairy tale, I'm realizing, this woman released her mother. I'm just looking at
Mm-hmm.
the symbolism of it and looking at the symbolism. This was written in the Arabian Nights. So clearly whatever we're experiencing in, overwhelmed with technology and so on, this is nothing new.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so hearing our own supportive voices, one part of what I was like kind of driven crazy about in light of this was I noticed, and I don't remember if I said this already today, is that I noticed that musicians who want to have better rhythm, did I already say that? I can't remember. I said,
But go ahead, say it again.
okay, will not use a metronome and will not count out loud. And I see that in my academy because I'll be there counting and I'll say, count out loud. And they're listening to me count. And I'm like, count out loud. And I remember when I was learning to play Baroque flamenco, which has, I can't play it on this, but it's, it's got all these techniques that were not standard techniques for me.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to learn to play them, certainly with fluency, I remember sitting there and saying, play, place, strum, slap, slap, slap. I mean, and I remember thinking like, I really have to do this? Why can't I just play this? And I remember I was alone in a friend's house and kind of out in the woods. And I remember I was screaming it because I was trying to get that into my body.
Mm-hmm.
And like play, place, strum, slap, strum, slap, and I found that I had to do that in order to get some kind of connection in my body. And I saw the length to which I had to go using my voice to support what I was doing physically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I see that other people are thinking they either shouldn't have to do that. I just don't understand why they don't do it. At the same time, there are things, I remember my therapist years ago saying, it's so sadly, saying, I've never understood why people find out what works and then they stop doing it. And I loved that moment. And I was like, oh my God, we all do this. I know this. I know that I need my voice to orient myself, to say, okay, Deborah, here we are at the beginning. What's my intention here?
Mhm.
What outcome do I want? Who do I want to be in this thing I'm going into? This will center me. Yet I won't do it, or I'll do it in my head. Like, why am I doing it in my head when I know that engaging and verbalizing is going to make a difference? Kathleen, help tell me that it
Well, I
doesn't.
mean, it's a good question. I mean, why do we not do the thing that we know would help us? And somehow I think it's tied into, again, having to relinquish the idea that we're omniscient and omnipresent and infallible and all of that. Again, to realize I need to stop and say out loud my intention for a meeting, my intention for the day, somehow does then posit that I don't know. And I think, consciousness, our ego consciousness can get way off track by acting as if ego is all there is, that if we just, okay, I'm going to do it. I had a thought, and it was there, and the choo-choo train left the station. It left the station without me. Maybe it will come back about what you were just saying. Oh, about the voice. Because from a psychological point of view, the voice that we really need to hear, the supportive voice that's really needed, is the deep inner voice of what Jung once called the inner companion of the self, what I call the true self in my embodiment circle. Because I'm thinking about when I was working with getting the rhythm right for a waltz I was playing, and I was really working to be able to feel the swing, to be, because I wanted to play it with that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so that whoever was listening to it would just immediately feel the flow. And counting it was not working for me, but when I stood up and out loud counted or hummed it and danced it. I was doing this waltz around my living room by myself. And then when I sat back down and played it, I had it. So the other thing, I think, that listening to our voice and having a supportive voice isn't always the literal voice with words. It sometimes is that still voiceless voice of the self,
Well, it sounds like can be the physicalized voice of the self as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think part of it is also being aware of what works for you. I have analysis who making a list or a flow chart will never work. But if they draw a mandala and they draw a diagram with a center with little pies connected, little slivers, that works for them. So I think a piece of it is also listening internally to where is your voice resonating within you. That there isn't just one way the voice resonates, that the voice emerges.
I want to bring up what Victoria said here because I think it's.
Yeah.
Am I bringing it up? Is it up? Why is it not up?
It's up. I see
okay,
it.
great. Okay. I really love this. She says, you were your own drill sergeant when you yelled out loud the steps on playing Baroque flamenco. Drill sergeant exists for a reason. And one of the things I really loved about your story, Kathleen, is you wanted to create that waltz feeling. So you went to the waltz, and I wanted to. So you went to it in an easier part of your body, a part of your body that could move without the technicalities of having to play. So that's always really important. But what I love about what Victoria said is that sometimes I need to go in the opposite direction. In order to have fluency, I have to go to drill sergeant. Why? Because structure releases freedom. It can. That the structure, getting the structure, knowing what I'm doing, then allows me, and knowing what I'm doing at a cellular level, you know, knowing a rhythm at a cellular level requires the entire body and the yelling and the sound. And, you know, when I was a kid, I used to watch these movies and they would show African drumming circles. And I was like, what? Everybody's doing the same thing. Like, I don't get it. Like, and they're all singing together. And like, what are they doing? That's not to my mind. Music was create something, blah 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 blah. What I then started getting was they were infusing a sense of rhythm. They were giving themselves this thing that will then support them throughout their life. They walk away and that rhythm is there anytime. Versus I didn't have me searching for it, you know, in when I need it, and then having to build that foundation of rhythm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm hearing that this. Well, first of all, I'm hearing there's so many tools. First of all, get up from the thing you're doing, go and dance. If dance is what you're looking for. If what I'm looking for is structure, yeah, make a structure. And then use it and keep doing that until it works.
And now again, what works for you? This is part of hearing your own supportive voice. You know, a lot of people I work with who would go into drill sergeant mode, that will immediately shut them down. So if they're going to drill or practice technique, they're not going to get anywhere with the drill sergeant attitude. So for other people, that's the motivation that's needed. So I think part of hearing your own supportive voice is really knowing what works for you, what will motivate you, what will focus your energies in the direction you want, because that will be different for each of us. I mean, there are commonalities, but it will be different. And so I think, again, we have to listen deeply and pay attention to how things work for us, you know, again, how it impacts us.
Yeah, and I want to pull up some of the other comments, but before I do, I'm just thinking that as you were speaking, I was like, well, it takes a village. It takes the waltzer and it takes the drill sergeant, and so we probably should have called this, you know, the supportive inner voices and all of their personalities. So I'm going to bring up what John says. Is it the inner voice that says, get out of the way while playing music? Singing with the strings of the harp releases much of what can get in the way of creativity. So here's another, you know, way to help. I've heard people in the academy talk about this too, to be, because we talk about it a lot, listen. So often when we're playing, we're not listening. And so to actually play the first thing and then see, where does that lead us? And then maybe we repeat it or maybe we do something else, but actively listening and following is another voice that we are hearing versus the voice that's like, play the notes right.
Yeah, you know, I want to say something to John, because this is, I shared a few episodes back having seen Masters of the Irish Harp play, and the accordion player whose name, he's very famous, eludes me, I apologize. And I was so struck by every time they started playing a tune, I could just see him become one with the music. And I was so struck by him getting out of the way and letting the music just be there. And so part of what I've been working on for myself is being able to stay in the music when other people are listening, because I can often sit down and play through something beautifully, artistically, without even mistakes when I'm in the room by myself. But if someone walks in the room or I'm playing for another person, it's a totally different ballgame. And what I've realized is that the minute someone came in, my ego, got all in the way about getting it right, whether the other would like it, blah, 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 blah. So I've very much been working on getting out of the way and just being with the music. And Wednesday I played for a friend because I've been practicing, and I sat down and I have been learning Carolyn's Farewell to Music, and I finally have it, and I played it for her, and I played it fluidly. I wasn't nervous. I really she wasn't there. It's as if she was no I was with the music. So that's a little bit of a side story, but I think it's related in that we want to pay attention to the inner voices that actually support us in doing the thing we want to do. I want to be able to share my music without bumbling with other people. I want to be able to do that. And so to be able to find that supportive inner voice, which for me is the voice that just says, get ego out of the way and be the music, be in the music, move with the music, let it move you.
I hear absolute, it's not, I don't hear that as a side story. I really hear that as fundamental to this, because you also talked about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And vulnerability to our own feelings. And I think vulnerability to our own feelings and our own love and our whatever it is with another person present. So the instrument allows us to experience that vulnerability in all ways, in a safe way alone. And then as we can start doing that vulnerability, and I'm thinking that this is part of why my therapist said to me, every day play this song, You Have a Voice. Every day play it for someone, to, in part, to feel that vulnerability, because there's nothing that hides me in that song. And so, you know what, Kathleen, I'm just going to play it again. All right, because chalk it up to my therapist. It's her fault. Okay, so no, it's not her fault. It's not. It's what I want. I want to be able to. I keep right going to the wrong key. Right. Okay. Okay. I think. Okay. So I believe that's the right key. I'm having anxiety here. All right. So, all right. You have a voice that's yours alone. This is the tie that binds you deep in the dark of evermore. That's how your soul can find you. So raise your voice, for in the end, it's all you have to bring. And this is the sound that turns lost into found when you sing. You have a voice that tells a tale. Nobody else can tell it as well. This is the tale, the song, the story of you. So raise your voice, for no one else can give the gift you bring. And this is the sound that turns lost into found. This is the sound that turns lost into found. This is the sound that turns lost into found when you sing.
beautiful pearls.
And what are you hearing it today? I one of the things I heard in the middle of it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a waltz. This is like Kathleen dancing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, it is so, so true that when we speak from our voice, that deep inner voice that is the true self, that we offer something no one else has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And that when we can move in sync with that, and that was what I was feeling, that movement throughout the song,
Mm.
you know, that when we move with that voice that is our true voice, then we do have a tale to tell, and we have gifts to share, and we bring forth our essence in that. And so finding our voice and not imitating the voice of another, not parroting others, is so, so important. Yeah.
Yeah, although I just want to say that sometimes I find that bring being someone else, especially someone I admire, can help me to find that. Okay, it can help me. You're right. We're
It can
going
help.
for that voice, and we're talking about how we can, what we need to help. And I'm pulling up what Monica is
Yeah.
saying. Um, Ah, okay. Monica's saying counting rhythm out loud sometimes does feel like an additional task, making it harder to feel. Dancing, it seems a great idea.
Yeah.
Dancing is a great idea. And maybe that's what I'm going to stop telling people to count out loud and say, go dance this around the room. Everybody, get up from your house. I want to see you dancing. I do remember learning that in music school, having a music teacher have us dance the 5/4
Mm-hmm.
rhythm, and how it stuck for me forever after because of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I know I've mentioned this book before, but Annie Murphy Paul, who is a science writer, her
Uh-huh.
book, The Extended Mind, Thinking Beyond the Brain, she has gathered together research of the last 20 or 30 years that support thinking as a function beyond the brain. And one of the categories is thinking with the body, which includes
Mhm.
thinking with sensation, gesture, and movement. And she cites all these research studies from the classroom, even like teaching science concepts, that when they have the students stand up and move around and create these shapes, they get it at a deeper level. The other thing I want to say to Monica is the other thing I've discovered just recently about myself is that part of what helps me stay in the music and stay in the rhythm is if I just let myself move a little bit from my back, just a slight like little movement from my pelvis while I'm playing the harp, instead of trying to sit completely still. It was a
Mm.
very interesting observation for me when I realized just a little subtle kind of movement and
Mhm.
like almost like breathing with my body with the phrasing, the difference that made for me, and being able to stay with the music, stay in the tune, stay in the rhythm, and forget about other people. So, anyway, bringing the
Yeah,
body in.
yeah, that's great, and I really love how Monica's pointing out it can feel like an additional task.
Yeah.
And I want to put that in my brain because I will, well, going and looking for my checklist, that's an additional task. That's going to get in the way. And I'm not really embracing the value of that helpful voice, that helpful to
Mm-hmm.
looking for help, getting support. I'm going to pull up Victoria, and I love so many comments today. And we're broadcasting on several different platforms, so you may not see these on your platform. Um, Victoria says, getting the motions into our body is a thing.
Yeah.
We often say we need to internalize something for us to really know it. Maybe there is something to be said about the power of the mind body connection, for sure. And what I love about you, what you said here, we often say we need to internalize something. And I was thinking, right, we say you need to internalize it, but do we say how? How does that happen?
And there's a lot to be said about the power of the mind body connection, which I can't say here, but my embodiment circle that I started, my online embodiment circle, which does open for new members to start December 21st, by the way, if you're interested. It says a lot about that. And part of the reason I started the embodiment circle is people don't know how to be in their bodies. People don't know how to connect the mind and the body. Yet Jung himself said they are different aspects of the same transcendental being. That, psyche is both body and mind. It's not separate. Our splitting it is an artificial divide, because of our own intellectual inability to see the whole. So anyway.
So Kathleen, since you mentioned your embodiment circle, can you just tell people how they would actually go find it?
Yeah, you can go to onlinesacredcircles.com. Yeah, onlinesacredcircles.com, and all the information is there. And if you can't remember that, go to Kathleen Wiley, Jungiananalyst.com, and you'll find
Oh, yeah, that's
it's all interconnected.
Easier to remember.
So I think online sacred circles is easy to remember.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I read a book years ago called The Soul of the White Ant. And it was all about, it was about colonial animals that the ant is not the animal is the whole colony. Mm-hmm. But what it was getting to, and it was talking about some animals can colonize and they'll become a different, the mouth of the thing. And they're that way forever. You're colonized and you become that thing. And there are some that become a colony and then can actually go back to individual. But the premise of the book that I really loved was that or maybe this was a different book. Sorry, that was a different book. I like that book too. It was something about the mind, whatever. By Rat Trap Taylor. How do I remember? Anyway, but it was all about the brain is the brain, but the mind is throughout the body. Mm-hmm. The mind is this soul system, mm-hmm. and how it connects and how it feeds. And so to even say the mind-body connection is almost a weird thing because I love it. The body is the mind. And yet we do need to say it because our society tends to separate these things.
Yes.
So this is great. I don't know. We got a comment that was so interesting, but I won't put it up. But thank you, Jessica. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm missing the second part of it. It says, "Wow, face fuchsia, tongue out," and that is a very interesting thought. But I don't quite get yet how it fits with the conversation, but I look forward to finding out. So where we left our heroes, and I see we really only have about, a couple more minutes. With all the input from people, which has been so amazing, is what I'm getting from myself, what I take away is, first of all, I have a lot more support within myself, just within myself. I can speak to myself. I can speak out loud. I can say before I go into anything, just like you would in triage, bones, bleeding, breathing, broken bones, or whatever, whatever the thing order is what's my intention? What do I let go of? What do I want to walk away? How do I want to walk away? And who do I want to be at the end of this meeting? Or whatever it is, to just take that second, however, maybe it's 5 seconds, maybe it's 10, but really to ground myself and make a new commitment to using my voice, to using my body, to using paper, which I love. My God, what a gift to humankind, paper. And so that I actually have something to engage with, as well as using, buddies. I use something called Focus Mate to help me focus. So I'm doing it with other people, but to really, what is my toolkit, and get more conscious about using it to support that voice, the voice that is my true voice.
Yes.
How about you, Kathleen? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying about identifying the toolkit, what supports you, what are the inner resources, and what do you know about how you work? I mean, that is so important to know how you work, what supports you, and being willing to experiment with that. And just because it works for someone else, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I think that if we can just really be okay with that, then we can find our way to what the blend is that allows us to bring forth our voice.
Yeah, and I'm also hearing that just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else.
Right.
And so to really start looking for if I'm anyone who's in a coaching position, start looking for alternates.
That's right. That's right.
So, wow. Kathleen, thank you so much for this conversation. And thank you to everyone was here and made comments. Victoria and John and Monica and Jessica Rose. Thank you for all your comments and for all the people who comment afterwards and for all the people who tell me afterwards, I watched Jung and Harp in this episode and this, thank you. Thank you for infusing conversation, the beauty and the art and the experience of conversation into my life. And I look forward to will we see each other next week again?
We'll have to check. It's Thanksgiving next week.
Oh, goodness. Right. Well, we'll figure that out. All right. Okay. And if we're here, we'll hope to see you. And if we're not here, we'll hope to see you the next week. Thank you so much.